so ein Thema wie Frösche den Menschen näher bringen. Nicht leicht, weil die meisten schon grauslich, glitschig, was immer jetzt, die Kinder sind auch besser. Daher fängt man halt schon sehr früh an mit der Wissenschaftskommunikation, indem man halt der Jugend das beibringt. Und trotzdem leben wir in einem Land in Österreich, das von der Wissenschaftsskepsis stark geprägt ist. Und man sagt, na ja, es könnte so sein, es könnte aber auch anders sein. Und wenn die Wissenschaft das tut, was sie tun soll, wenn die Forscher das tun, was sie tun sollen, Fragen stellen, weil das bringt die Wissenschaft und die Welt weiter, dann wird das in der öffentlichen Wahrnehmung als Unsicherheit, als Meinungsvielfalt, als Skepsis, na, die wissen auch nicht, wo es lang geht, eigentlich wahrgenommen. Und ich glaube, unser gemeinsamer Auftrag muss sein, auch im Fundraising, aber auch in der Kommunikation selber, aufzuzeigen, was heißt es, gesellschaftliche Probleme, naturwissenschaftliche Probleme durch wissenschaftliche Ansätze, durch gute Forschung auch zu bearbeiten. Es freut mich sehr, dass Sie da sind. Heute ein bisschen eine kleinere Runde. Sie haben das schon gesehen. Auch unser Vertreter des Bundesministeriums für Wissenschaft und Forschung und Bildung, der Herr Magister Richter, ist leider krankheitsbedingt nicht da, aber ich werde seine Begrüßung einfach mitmachen, wenn Sie erlauben, und Sie auch namens des Bundesministeriums begrüßen. Ja, es freut mich sehr, dass Sie da sind, aber vor allem freut es mich auch, wir haben heute auch einen internationalen Gast aus Luxemburg da, von Universität Luxemburg, eine Kollegin, die sozusagen hier auch ein bisschen hineinschnuppern möchte in die österreichische Fundraising-Szene, in der Universitätsfundraising, Wissenschaftsfundraising. Ja, Wissenschaftskommunikation muss nicht ein trockenes Thema sein. Ich freue mich schon sehr drauf und hoffentlich Sie auch auf einen Vortrag sozusagen der Science Busters, denn genau das ist ja eigentlich, was wir tun. Wir wollen Leute begeistern für das Thema, das wir vertreten, dass unsere Forschungseinrichtungen, unsere Universitäten in bester Qualität auch liefern. Wir wollen den Menschen, wollen sie abholen mit den Themen. Sie nicht nur überzeugen, Neudeutsch würde man heute sagen, früher hat man gesagt, in Wiener Geschichten erzählen, heute sagt man Storytelling, das ist viel seriöser und richtiger natürlich, aber dieses Vermögenden des Landes gehen in ein gemeinnütziges Projekt, gehen in gemeinnützige Zwecke. Abholen der Menschen besser gelingen kann. Und ich glaube, das brauchen wir auch. Die Herausforderung der Zukunft, die Herausforderung, die wir heute haben, egal in welchem Bereich der gesellschaftlichen Entwicklung wir hinschauen, wir brauchen Wissenschaft, wir brauchen Forschung, um die Herausforderung, die Gesellschaft auch letztlich weiterzutreiben und die Herausforderungen auch zu meistern. Und hier hilft uns überhaupt nicht eine skeptische Betrachtungsweise oder eine Politikdiskussion. Sie kennen das alle in Österreich, Landeshauptleute, die sich lustig machen über Forschung oder medizinische Ergebnisse oder sagen, naja, eigentlich, man könnte jetzt übertragt sagen, es gab einen Vizekanzler in dem Land, der gesagt hat, das Recht muss der Politik folgen und übersetzt könnte man sagen, die Wissenschaft muss der Politik folgen. Nein, überhaupt nicht. Die Wissenschaft ist bekanntermaßen frei und das ist auch ganz wichtig so, denn sie soll ja letztendlich neutral und Ergebnisse produzieren, wieder produzieren, Erkenntnisse produzieren, die letztendlich die Politik aufgreift, hoffentlich. Evidenzbasierte Politik ist zwar auch nicht immer häufig, aber doch vielleicht jetzt gerade auch nach 2 Jahren Corona häufiger geworden, hier der Politik zuarbeiten, Erkenntnisse bringen und mithelfen, diese großen Herausforderungen zu lösen. Ihre Aufgabe, meine Damen und Herren, im Fundraising, in der Kommunikation ist es, diese Übersetzungsarbeit in Ihren Einrichtungen auch zu leisten. Und ich glaube, wenn man das sozusagen auch die letzten Jahre hier gemeinsam mit den Fachtagungen hernimmt, so hat dieses Kommunikationsthema viel, viel stärker zugenommen, zwischen uns allen auch. Die Diskussion darüber, wir haben jetzt nicht nur gesagt, es geht um 100.000 Euro da oder dort, auch wichtig, klar. Wir wollen ja unsere Projekte und Einrichtungen auch finanzieren und die Programme, aber es geht natürlich ganz stark darum, auch die Brücke zwischen den Einrichtungen, den Universitäten, den Forschungseinrichtungen und der Gesellschaft auch zu bauen. Und Sie sind dieser Brückenbauer in der Gesellschaft. Dazu möchte ich Ihnen an dieser Stelle auch gleich gratulieren. Ich glaube, das ist eine ganz wichtige Aufgabe und das spreche ich jetzt nicht als Geschäftsführer des Fundraiser-Verbands, sondern als Biologe, als Wissenschaftler, dem das ein Anliegen ist, dass wir nicht in unserem Glastürmen, wie das so schön früher war, stehen und dort verbleiben, sondern dass wir hinausgehen in die Gesellschaft und unsere Erkenntnisse und die unserer Einrichtungen auch teilen. Ja, genug der einleitenden Worte. Sie warten sicher schon auf die ersten Referentinnen und Referenten. Ich möchte mich an der Stelle natürlich beim Bundesministerium für Wissenschaft und Forschung, Bildung, ich vergesse immer, also Bildung, Forschung und Wissenschaft bedanken. Ich sehe mich jetzt selber im Screen, das ist ganz spannend. Für die Unterstützung, dass wir wieder die Tagung machen können und möchte gerne noch hinweisen, wir haben ja eine ganze Reihe anderer Programmpunkte auch. Wir werden Seminare machen, wir werden wieder Webinare machen, Vernetzungstreffen. Nehmen Sie an teil, nehmen Sie die Gelegenheit auch hier mit den Referenten und Referentinnen ins Gespräch zu kommen, sich auszutauschen, Netzwerke zu bilden, Netzwerke für Kommunikation und Netzwerke fürs Fundraising. Darf ich an der Stelle unseren Partnern auch bedanken, die unsere Jahressponsoren sind, wie die Teledialog und Fund Office. Und damit Sie am Ende des Tages nicht traurig und trockene Kehle nach Hause gehen, sorgt heute wieder Wine Aid für eine kleine Weinverkostung. Ich wünsche Ihnen einen anregenden, spannenden und auch erhellenden und vor allem auch amüsanten Tag heute. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Ja, guten Morgen und herzlich willkommen auch von meiner Seite. Mein Name ist Sarina Wiens, ich bin vom Fundraising-Verband, bin dort vor allem zuständig fürs Spendengütesiegel, also falls Sie Fragen dazu haben, dürfen Sie gerne zu mir kommen. Ja, und ich darf Sie heute durch den Vormittag begleiten. Ein besonderes Willkommen möchte ich unseren Gästen im Stream aussprechen. Wir freuen uns, dass auch Sie dabei sind und ich glaube, wir müssen uns gleich entschuldigen, weil der Stream gerade schon kurz ausgefallen ist, aber ich hoffe, das war der einzige Ausfall heute. Ja, jetzt würde ich gerne einen Blick aufs Programm werfen. Und zwar starten wir gleich mit unserer ersten Keynote, bei der es um Veränderung und Transformation gehen wird. Danach gehen wir bereits in die Kaffeepause und machen danach frisch und wach weiter mit 2 weiteren Keynotes. Danach findet die Mittagspause statt im oberen Stockwerk. Und um 13 Uhr treffen wir uns direkt in den Workshop-Sessions. Falls Sie nicht mehr wissen, für welche Workshops Sie sich angemeldet haben, können Sie das draußen am schwarzen Brett nochmal nachlesen. Ja, nach der ersten Workshop-Session gibt es nochmal eine Kaffeepause und dann geht es gleich weiter mit der zweiten Workshop-Session. Und zum Abschluss, wie gesagt, laden wir Sie ein auf ein Gläschen Wein. Am Ende der Vorträge haben Sie die Möglichkeit, Fragen zu stellen. Da würden wir Sie bitten, dass Sie auf das Mikrofon warten, damit die Gäste im Stream die Fragen auch hören. Und falls Sie im Stream Fragen haben, bitte per Chat stellen. Die werden dann hier im Saal laut vorgelesen. Never Fear Change is the title of our first presentation this morning. And it seems to be the motto of the speaker's life as well. She's from the United States and recently moved from Budapest to Vienna. She's the Vice President for Development and recently also became the Interim Director of Communications at the Central European University. She believes in philanthropy and the power of networks and will teach us how to joyfully transform our work. We are curious to learn from you, Trisha Tanner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, perfect. So good morning. It really is an honor to be here. I am very grateful for, you'll hear in a little bit about the ways that Stefan and the Fundraising Verband have helped CEU since we came to Austria. And so it's really an honor for me to be invited and to be here to share a little bit with you about our experiences and how we've been learning from you and how we hope, also to share and exchange. As you said, my name is Trisha Tanner. I'm Vice President for Development at Central European University. And today, as you also mentioned, I'm coming with a new hat, Interim Director for Communications, which I think is really appropriate given the given what I'll be talking about in terms of combining to be more effective, and given the topic of the symposium, in terms of what fundraising can learn from science communications. But I'm not going to talk about storytelling. Rather, this talk really is it's more about mindset. It's more about where we need to be in our minds and the perspectives that we need to have to be open to change, to connection, to learning from each other, with some examples peppered in of ways that we've been doing that and experimenting a bit at Central European University. So the title of my keynote, Never Fear Change, Inspiration for Transforming with the Times, is in part a response to the immense change that's been brought by the pandemic and the anxiety and fear and stress has come with that. I want to challenge us all to turn that around and reclaim change as a positive force. So let me just see if I can get the slides here. Yes. We'll talk about the transformations you all might be going through, as well as CEU. And then I'll provide some resources from the philanthropic sector, really for you to look at on your own later, but we'll touch on it briefly. So as you can see here, change is hard. It's an easy thing to be afraid of. You heard in the introduction that change has been a large part of my career. So I have worked in finance and banking, in the health sector, in the arts, in the international NGO world, in higher education. I've worn many, many different hats in those roles, but the constant has been international fundraising. So I've been doing that for over 20 years now. So, this is a community that I really love, that I get a lot of inspiration from, and I'm happy to be part of it now here in Austria. My favorite talks are ones that make me laugh, but I'm just going to warn you that this is not going to be one of those. It's not going to be a funny talk. I am constantly reminded by my husband and my son that I am the least funny person in our household. I hope that maybe my odds are a little bit better here in, with this audience, together with the live streamers of 50 to 60 people. Maybe I cannot be the least funny here, but that said, the truth is that a lot of the change that we've experienced over the last 2+ years during the pandemic has been difficult, it's been painful, it's even been existential. Some of it is positive, I think, and we can, take that into account. It can have, I think, really lasting impact, particularly for us as university fundraisers, science fundraisers. A few examples. So science communication has been, and science communicators have been at the forefront of news internationally. It sparked plenty of debate, yes, that's for sure, but it's also created an open new space for science communication in the media and also in the public consciousness. I just want us to remember that. I think that's very important. There's a new space for us in the coming months and years to put what we're doing out into the public. Also, flexible work arrangements have gained greater acceptance. It's allowed people to be more purposeful with their time. And this has the potential to enable us as science fundraisers also to marshal more support through volunteerism. This is something that CEU certainly doesn't do enough of yet, and we need to do more. Digital engagement was catalyzed during the past 2 years in ways that we really, had only imagined, and we were all forced to do it, to sit on, in Zoom calls, seemingly never ending. But it gives us new ways to connect with global audiences, and that's a point that I really want to make now, because later I'll be talking a bit more about the rest of the world in context of our fundraising, both through alums, through corporates, through institutional funding. So this talk is about change and how by embracing it, we can discover new and helpful perspectives and maybe even a newfound joy of learning. I think we're all coming out of very, very heavy times, and we need to just have that mindset, again, to be open and ready to learn. I think also that as we learn how to transform and to learn from that process and from each other, we can get more joy from what we're doing more effectively every day. I think we can do things more effectively together. So as a bit of background, Central European University, where I work, has just turned 30. We were founded in 1991 to help prepare new leaders as the region transitioned to democracy. Today, CEU is one of the world's most international universities, with over 100 countries represented in our student body of 1,500 and over 18,000 CEU alums living and working in 150 countries around the world. CEU has become an acclaimed center for the study of contemporary economic, social, and political challenges, sustainability in the environment, and a source of support for building open and democratic societies that respect human rights and human dignity. We are a young, small, and relatively nimble institution. And so we're different than many of you. But when I started working at CEU 8 years ago, I never really imagined how flexible and resilient we would be called upon to be. As many of you know, CEU was forced out of Hungary through a 2017 change in the higher education law that made our American degree programs illegal. When it was clear that we would open a campus in Vienna, there were, of course, lots of changes, and there was lots to learn. But now, before I get further into our story, I'd like to hear about changes that you may be experiencing. And so we have a mentee, and so I'd like for you all to get out your phones and be prepared to vote. You can vote by going to www.mentee.com and typing in the code, which will appear on the screen in just a moment. It's 6329 0991. So here, let's just quickly vote on what kinds of changes are you encountering in your lives? Personal, professional, institutional, all of the above. We can, and so you see up there the website and the code to put in to vote. We've got some all of the aboves coming in. I think that tracks because, you know, we're all experiencing lots and lots of changes. Give everybody just a little bit more time to vote. Then we'll move on to the next one. A few more answers, please. Okay. So we're seeing really a focus on everything is changing, or a lot that's personal, also professional. So the institutional being 0, I think we need to just remember that a lot of those are in the all 3 category. So are you helping to shape the change? Next question. Yes, no, some of the time. This is exciting because this already says to me that you have this mindset, that you're, you know, that you're in the positions, that you're ready to shape the change. And I hope that that means that we can have quite a bit of dialogue at the end about things that you're doing and things that we can also learn from. Okay, next question. Do you see ways that you can benefit, grow, and/or learn from these changes? Yes, no, or some of the time. I think that's pretty much everybody. So we'll pop to the next one, which might take a little bit more time. What do you hope to change? If there's something in particular, you know, around especially your role, what you're doing in fundraising, what you'd like to get out of today, please just take a moment to answer what you hope to change. We've got some great answers coming in, focusing on what's really important. That's a huge one. Enlarging study offers, more close to practical use. Oh my gosh, this is a conversation that we have pretty much every day at CEU as well. The attitudes towards how important science is, huge topic for the conversations today, I think. Closing the digital divide, which I think also really kind of brings out issues of social justice and inequity as well, and hoping to change and improve my relationship to my clients in need, working on building relationships and trust. We will talk a little bit about that as well, relationships and trust. And please, Stefan, can you help me with this next one?
To change the skepticism towards science in Austria.
Thank you. The attitudes toward how, is there one that I missed? Okay, these are great answers. Anybody else still finishing theirs up? Give just a moment. Management's attitude toward communication, huge, huge. This is something that I'll get into a little bit when we talk about structure, because I mean, I think as a fundraiser, I see communication as one of the most important functions of what we do, or what the institution should do to support the fundraising. And we're making some changes around our structure for that. work toward more social equity, also very important, and something that we're thinking about as well as we think about how we're fundraising for scholarships and some of the other things that CU is doing, improve the role of fundraising for my university. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on. Thank you so much for participating in that. It's really helpful for me to have a bit of a sense of where you are. And I'm so happy that so many of you are in this space of shaping change, because I really want us to embrace change, also because this is what our institutions exist to create. Whether through scientific discoveries, the creation of new knowledge, solving problems big or small, the changes set in motion by higher education through the centuries has really created tectonic shifts in our societies, in how we live our lives, in how we understand our world. So just a few examples, and I'm not an expert in this, you all can give me many more examples, but just a few examples of change spurred by Austrian universities. It was an Austrian university that produced the Nobel-winning biologist who, at the turn of the last century, discovered our basic blood types and paved the way for successful blood transfusions, which save lives every single day today. That same Austrian university provided the intellectual foundations to Karl Popper, whose work on open society not only shaped visions of democracy in the decades after World War II, but it also inspired the founding of CEU, of my university. And today, Austria is ranked 11th in the world for patent applications and 6th in the EU. This track record has everything to do, I would argue, with the inventive spirit of the extraordinary university community here. So since today's focus is on how we as fundraisers can learn from science communication, I draw that thread really intentionally. I think it's important for us to remember that inventive spirit and that our universities exist to drive change, to create change in society, to create new things. And I want to share a few examples of how our university is leveraging some of the changes institutionally that we've been making to work more effectively to grow our relationships with funders, with business partners, and with alumni. And I'm just going to say, none of this is concrete. This is all stuff that we're experimenting with, that we're trying, that we're learning as we go. And so I'm not sharing, gems that will really be mind-blowing in any way. I'm sure many of you are doing a number of these things as well, but this is one perspective from a small university, and I hope that it will be helpful for you. So for CEU, it all starts thank you. It all starts with Vienna, with the changes in Hungary's higher education law that forced the university to move, and with the extraordinary welcome that we received from Austria and the higher education community here. As I mentioned, we had a lot to learn as we were moving the majority of our faculty, students, and staff from Budapest to Vienna. And what has changed the most in the intervening time is how we approach these three things: people and place, partnerships, and structure. And I have this little image here of the clinking glasses, just because change is hard. We're hardwired as humans to handle change and to be resilient. And the last 2 years, I think, have proven that to everyone. But we're also really well equipped to collaborate. And these glasses here, clinking, refer to a study that two cognitive scientists at CEU did around what facilitates in the brain joint action. how do we know that when we raise our glass, it's all going to clink, at the right time? And so Natalie Sabans and Günther Nublik have studied over many years all kinds of joint action and collaboration, and how we as humans are set up to naturally think not just about how we're doing things, but how other people are doing things, and even think about those in ways that inform our own action, right? So this is just a kind of to have in the background. This is in our minds, we're already prepared to collaborate and act jointly, and to change together. But let me just come back now to people and place. So one of the first things that I learned when we found out that we were going to move to Vienna, or at least what everybody told me, was in Vienna, there's no chance for fundraising. I was told that people give to arts and culture, if anything, not to education, certainly not to higher education or universities. But then right away, Stefan invited me to the Science Fundraising Congress, and I could clearly see that all of you have been working to create the space for philanthropy in higher education, and this felt really promising. And that already, if you take a step back and look at the changes in that space, say over the last 10 years, and what you all have accomplished, it's huge. It's huge. It's a very dynamic space, and it's growing, and there's a lot of promise here. But still, we didn't have as CEU a significant base of alumni or business partners or potential donors in Austria. We also didn't want to elbow in and position ourselves as competitors in a space where we had been so welcomed. Instead, we chose to look at Austria and at Vienna itself as a magnet, as a destination for global philanthropy. We heard from many of our current and potential donors that it was easier for them to come and visit us in Vienna because they had other business here, or because they wanted to visit this museum or go to that opera. And so in this way, we could imagine some new kinds of opportunities to partner and to create situations where all ships rise. We began to partner with the Fundraising Verband and others to share our experiences, including around attracting American funding, which is one place that we have strong experience with as a European and an American institution. We held a seminar on this topic expressly for Austrian civil society organizations and other nonprofits during our Philanthropy Week last year, I think which some of you may have attended. And I'll say more about that in just a moment. I'm also sharing some of the resources that we prepared for that in the presentation, which you'll receive afterwards, so you can have a look at it. But by offering ourselves as a resource, we started to learn more from the people that we met, from all of you, from others, and they started to introduce us to others. And this created a virtuous cycle of relationships, trust, and introductions, which is widening our network by the day. I really appreciated the remark about changing relationships and trust with clients. I think a lot of it really is about even just building that one first relationship, and then the cumulative effect of what that first conversation does. I mean, I do think back, Stefan, to like our first conversation, I don't know, in 2017, 2018, and how much that's kind of informed and helped grow what we're able to do and who we're able to partner with here. So, of course, the pandemic gave us a chance to further break down barriers to global engagement. And now our audiences are changing. So many outside of Vienna are happy to be able to live stream in, like today, to events where they can't travel here. We also now produce special digital events just for them, so that we can reach global audiences more easily than before, and keep our funders, our alums, closer to the university and more engaged with what we're doing on a regular basis. We just have to do it strategically and I would say creatively. And here's where we are also working to improve our work with storytelling, because you only have so much attention from people on a screen, and really you need to be able to tell powerful stories about what the university is doing and what impact that has. So I want to encourage everyone to just think a little bit differently in terms of people and place, about the alums and partners that you may have in the world outside of Austria. Surely there are alums who've moved off, or also people who have connections to Austria that you may not yet be engaging with. You probably have some of those circles covered, but who else can you involve? We hear a lot, especially at our own institution, from people worrying that if they haven't been in touch with someone, say a student graduated, I mean, we're only 30, so up to a few decades ago, that they've like effectively opted out. But I think we don't know that until we ask, until we try. So I would really encourage everyone to be bold and make the connection and see what happens. We have some really good examples of this in recent years and especially recent months, because the desire to help over the course of the pandemic and especially now, given the devastating war in Ukraine, it's kind of turned that worry about disconnection on its head. There's a great need. People want to be involved. They want to support. And so just to give you one example, a few weeks ago, I got an email just out of the blue from someone I didn't know, wanting to meet up the very next day about scholarships for Ukrainian students. I tried to rearrange my schedule to make it work because they were going to be, away on holiday for the next couple of weeks, and this was the chance. So I took the call, and it turns out that this is an alum who graduated over 20 years ago that we had basically zero contact with since then. He happened to read an email about what we were doing to support Ukrainian students, and it turns out that he's head of corporate social responsibility for a major company and was in charge of dealing with their strategy for Ukraine, and there was a match. We didn't know. We probably would never have reached out to him. We were very lucky to get that outreach, but it's just one example of where there may be connections that you don't know until you pick up the phone or write the email or have the coffee and reach out. So now they're planning to provide scholarships for up to 10 students over the next 2 years. We're seeing alums who've moved, for example, to the UK, Germany. Now they're the US, now they're marshaling support for major foundations, for companies, and they're ready to help. These, again, they're not the folks who have been in our closest circles, but this is really an opportunity. Also donors with family connections to Austria. So for example, a New York foundation that we had years ago, a small $5,000 conference gift from, we learned that there was a family connection generations ago to Austria, and we got back in touch. And now they've provided a grant of $120,000 for student support and research here in Vienna, just because they have that distant family connection. So again, just be creative in your research and who you're reaching out to. And think expansively about where are your people, your alums, potential donors. Think about Austria as a global draw. It really is. And think about also drawing people together. So we have a student philanthropy council, for example, which is one way that we've started to bring students into this work. and take students who want to be working for a nonprofit or a foundation after they graduate. And now we have a chance to be in touch with them while they're on campus. That's not necessarily the easiest thing to get. And then we can also connect them as a network with alums who are working in philanthropy, many of whom we've never been in touch with before, but we can say to them, hi, we have this student group, they're learning about philanthropy, will you present to them? Or, hi, we're creating our philanthropy week, will you participate in this? And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So I mentioned before our philanthropy week. This is a way that we're really combining resources. So you see here the different offices at CEU who were sponsors of this week last year, Alumni Relations Office, Community Engagement Office, Development Office, our Student Human Rights Initiative, our Student Philanthropy Council, and then also partnering with the Communications Office to get the word out about that. We put together a slate of events, and I'll have to tell you that this was so much work, and it was all done digitally because it was last year and everything was remote, that we had to take this year off, and we're going to do it in the fall instead of this spring. But it was very, very positive and productive. On the top, this maximizing engagement with American philanthropy in Europe, the seminar that I mentioned before, and the resources that are in the presentation around, I'll show them to you quickly right before I close, but we had this, which I think was a very positive kind of bringing together, and again, sharing something that we know and that we can share. And then you'll see, several other events with students and with alums. It's just, an excuse in a way to reach out, but also to elevate the idea of philanthropy on our campus and showcase to our community what philanthropy can do in higher education. I mentioned before that, we want to see ourselves as partners, not as competitors. And this is just an intuitive approach, that we've had. This is the way that we wanted to look at coming into Austria. But it's also had an impact on the bottom line. And there's been a lot of recent research that suggests that greater competition amongst nonprofits increases aggregate donations, but reduces average donations per organization. The UK's fundraising regulator has cracked down on aggressive fundraising and is allowing people to block charities on a wholesale basis, partly because of this heavy competition. And there are now instances where we see certain groups of charities or certain causes that are so powerful that they're edging out philanthropy for other causes. For example, in the UK, Australia, and the US, and there's a lot of celebrity power backing this, breast cancer as a cause is edging out philanthropic support for other charities. So one recommendation has been to think about, how to have greater cooperation, perhaps through, an umbrella organizations raising funds that are split equally based on, input about research and support needs. And we're testing this approach very carefully with a few on the European and global level with other universities to help us look beyond what we're doing, learn from each other, and see what new things we can create. We're the leading member of a university network embedded in Europe called Civica, and another that's looking out globally called the Open Society University Network. And our office has been pulling together all of the fundraisers from those universities in the first instance, just to share and exchange, what we're all doing. We're all part of these networks. What can we learn from each other? What can we do together? And and then we'll see, can we have, joint fundraising? We're not sure, but it's something that we think we need to test and learn from, in part because philanthropy is changing into a space that wants to address things more systemically and wants to address things on a larger scale. So, as a network, perhaps we can offer something more powerful in those contexts. And I've included in the presentation links to a few of those networks. I think that I'm going to skip a few things because I do want to have about 5 minutes for a conversation. And just to quickly say that, in terms of the geography, people, and place, you can see where our funding is coming from and how it's shifting a little bit since between February and May. We started outreach around our response for Ukraine and supporting especially Ukrainian students. I'll leave you with that to look at later. But in terms of structure, we've been learning from Austrian universities and looking at what you all are doing and seeing that there's a lot more kind of connection in places that we have silos. So we've brought together all of our external facing units, alumni relations, development, communications, recruitment, public affairs, et cetera, under one prorector. And we hope that going forward, that will strengthen our work together. And then I think the important thing to know here, to just close, is to think about your attitude toward change. And even if you don't have control over it, think about turning your perspective around. Can you change your own perspective or expectations? What you're asking and of whom in your sort of fundraising role, or who is involved. Maybe there's somebody else who can help you connect, to that donor or that alum that you haven't been thinking about. So I think I'll just close here and see if there are any questions. Bottom line is, I hope that I've provided, sort of a sprinkling of examples that might be helpful in building fresh perspectives and thinking about what you can do sort of collectively and maybe differently.
Thank you so much, Trisha, until now. And are there any questions for Trisha? Feel free to ask them in German. If you feel more comfortable, we can translate them.
I'll show you two just quickly. These are some of the slides that I have for you to look at on your own, just things that we prepared for that other seminar. Questions, ideas, experiences to share?
Okay. Yes, there is.
Trisha, one question bothering me is, do you think is the most important factor to increase philanthropy in the country? We struggle a little bit that a lot of small amounts of money is going to the sector, but we're seeking still these major gifts. You have it in the US or you have it also in other countries. How you would change the behavior, the philanthropy culture in a country? What is the most important thing you think?
I think it's such a mosaic of factors that I'm not sure that I could pick out the most important thing, except that I think you have hit on one of the really crucial topics with the theme of this symposium. It's about communication. It's about helping people understand why there's a need and what it does. And, there are lots of, sort of structural things and, many other issues sort of, within the country that I know everyone has been working on in different ways. But just to show you here, this is illustrating exactly what you're saying, right? That the most major philanthropy really is taking place in the US and North America. And the primary reason for that is because the government doesn't do it. So one of the things that was part of the slide on Philanthropy Week that you might have seen was a student debate around, should philanthropy fill the gaps that are left by government? In the US, that's what's done. Here, there's a very fortunate situation that, for public universities at least, that there is a huge amount of government investment in science and innovation. This is, I think, shown out in the statistic that I gave about Austria, having filed some of the most patents in the world, right? That innovation culture is being supported at a national level in ways that it's not really being supported elsewhere. So I think in a way it's about telling the story very powerfully about what needs there are and why there's more that needs to be given than what is being funded by government sources in such a way that people can feel that they can engage with it. That's for the local context. I also really think that there is openness and possibility for global philanthropy coming in here. And that's the main thing that I wanted to try to demonstrate with our case. It's a small case, it's very recent, we're just developing this, but I do think that, together we can create more of that space where the local philanthropy space is widened, but also more global philanthropy is coming in.
Thank you so much.